So people who are watching this video, you're coming from different backgrounds, different walks of life. I'm gonna set the video up by explaining like my background so that you could kind of visualize and see how to correlate any nuggets to your own situation. I do partner with people who are way smarter than me in this area. So of course, feel free to check out theworthens.com. But this is my transparent story, my view, and I hope you get a lot of goodness out of it, okay? So the current role that I have now, I am an outbound sales development representative, predominantly prospecting into companies that are thousands of employees. That is not my background, okay? My background, I have been in tech sales for a little over 2 years now. When I was interviewing for this current role, as well as I was interviewing for other roles as well at the same time, my tech sales background predominantly was in SMB, small business, on the closing side. So I did work as an account executive, predominantly working closing companies 1 to 10 employees. All right. If I was dealing with big companies, we're talking 20 to 30 employees. Okay. So that background, that was not selling into thousands of employee size companies, right? A lot more revenue with the company. And so I was in a lead development representative role for about 3 months in the beginning of my tech sales journey. And that was still just setting up for upsell opportunities, not net new business. I am an outbound net new business sales development representative. So my resume looked good from that aspect of having that experience. It really did look good. But obviously I did have to sell myself and parlay on some things. And I'm in an industry that's a pretty niche industry. That I had to really sell myself on getting into. Cybersecurity arena is what I'm in. And it's very cool because I specifically wanted to work in the cybersecurity arena, the data arena, the AI arena. And that was my story. And that kind of brings me to the first thing that I really want to harp on is that you have to know your why and understand it. And I'm coming from a place of trying to explain to you, it's not just about having a good story. It is about you believing your story and it being your honest story in a sense, right? And so when I was going through the interviewing process, I was applying to companies that fit my story that I believed. And my story was this. I want to work in a specific niche with a specific company that I am passionate about, mildly obsessing over committing myself to being a contributor to the team. And that was it. Like I wanted to be in cybersecurity for probably more than a year at this point. And I did not mind committing myself to bringing as much value as I could to getting results, making good money for myself, and making sure I'm contributing to the company shining. Okay. And so when I would go through these interviewing rounds, that story was so embedded in me that is what I would say. And I would come from a humble position. Like, hey, I'm not saying that I did everything right in my last role, but I just feel like at this point in my career, it's okay for me to go after where I want to be planted at for long-term growth. Okay. And so leading up now to the interviewing rounds, I did a total of, I believe, 5 interviews. Okay. 5. It was the initial screening with the recruiter. And then I did the direct manager who I would be working for. It was that manager and another manager, a senior manager. It was another manager with him in that interviewing round. And then the next round was maybe like a peer interview. And then it was like a senior leader and then another senior leader that I interviewed with. And they only filled 1 seat in that position that they was hiring for. So I was very fortunate. I don't know how many people went through the interviewing round. I couldn't look that up on LinkedIn. I had a paid version for that. But I'm really fortunate that I was able to get the role. And so along with knowing that story, you have to actually land the interview, right? And so things that go into that would be making sure that your resume is polished. Like if you don't really have experience in that area, specifically for the tech sales arena, get help. That's my recommendation. Whether you pay for the help, whether you reach out to somebody for the help, get help. All right. because you want that initial impression to actually be able to get you in the door. And then the other aspect is being willing to reach out to these companies. And really what that's saying is you're not sitting back waiting on something to be handed to you at the end of the day, right? And so get you an Apollo.io account. And then you can find like emails and phone numbers for recruiters, sales leaders, and things like that. A lot of you probably have heard these things before, and be willing to reach out. I did reach out to, I believe, 2 people within the organization, but I honestly don't know if I got the interview because I reached out to them. Like, I honestly don't know. So, but from there, I went through that initial screening, and then I went into the interview with the sales leader. Oh, and this is what I want to tell you. All right. So yeah, let's talk about this. I prepared for each round specifically based on the person or the persona in front of me. Right. And so I gained an understanding about each person ahead of time. I tried to visualize and internalize what they cared about. What does the recruiter care about? What does the direct manager care about? What does the senior manager care about? And I would make sure that I was looking to bring value in the conversation and have a dialogue that was more positioned around how I could contribute and bring value to them, right? And so that's huge. Preparation is everything. It makes the difference. And yes, I put in quite a bit of time into it. And that may be necessary when you're looking to get into a highly competitive industry like such. Right. And then from there, after each interview, I did a follow-up, right? So I was very meticulous over highlighting important things, takeaways that I got from the actual interview with the individuals. And so I would touch on that in my follow-up. Before every round, I would ensure that I would send an email that I would basically draw some unique attention about myself that they couldn't necessarily find on LinkedIn or my resume. And I would do that to not just cut through the noise, but understanding that these people I'm interviewing with are extremely busy. And so I wanted to give them bullet points that could give them something to talk about as they're entering into the interview without them having to go through, their whole normal routine with every candidate and asking these canned questions. I gave them the bullet point to try to steer that conversation. And then that was also my agenda that I would use in terms of how I would actually answer and position my responses to certain questions. Here's something that's really important to keep in mind while you're going through these interviews. You might land some opportunities with some companies that you maybe salivate over. But one thing that I kept doing was applying to other companies and interviewing with other companies, no matter how good my interview rounds were, right? Because you cannot put all of your eggs in one basket. There are hundreds and even at times over 1,000 people applying for the position that you are applying for. So just keep that in mind. And that's a part of the SDR life of not putting all of your eggs in one person showing up to a meeting. And that's just a part of life in general, right? Just kind of spreading the seed, not relying on one thing and being dependent upon that thing, but being more dependent. In my case, dependent on God, Jesus Christ, and being reliant on what I can actually bring to the table and do with my hands and with my faith. And if I only apply to one company and only interview at one company, then essentially I feel like that's me saying I'm relying on that company to hire me, when that's not really the case. All right. That was the side note. And so when it came time to start getting things narrowed down, to wrapping things up in terms of me anticipating an offering letter coming, the thing to that is I kind of started, I guess you can say, sowing seed on what I kind of needed my pay range to be earlier on. It's different ways to go about that. This is not a one size fits all kind of thing. My situation was a little unique because I was coming from an SMB closing role. And so when I was asked kind of what my pay range was, I kind of had a number in mind that I kind of put out there that was more on the higher end of the range. And that way I just felt like it would be less friction when it comes time to the end of receiving the offering. Now, again, different circumstances. You can obviously feel free to reach out and have a further conversation. And we partner with certain platforms, specifically one I want to highlight, Higher Levels. The link is in the description. I feel like they do a phenomenal job at really helping people practically and showing them the ropes. Me personally, my wife, we went through Coursecareers probably 2.5 years ago. So reach out for more specific help if you have questions, even if that means reaching out to me personally. So in recap, if I had to really sum up high level of what were the most important aspects of landing a role, preparation and really knowing my why and believing my why. I mean, those things, that is what I would say is the most important. Knowing my why, because you got to understand the why is how I tailor my pre-meeting email. The why is how I answer probably the bulk of the questions asked in the interview. And the why is my actual driving force that contributes to my confidence because it's something that I actually believe. And then you want to make sure that you're actually able to get your foot in the door. So make sure that your resume is clean. Make sure that your LinkedIn is clean. And if you're watching this video, I'm sure you've watched a number of other videos on learning about that stuff. And then being willing to outbound to companies. And then with that, understand that you want to, in my opinion, you want to apply to companies that fits your why. So again, my why was I want to work in a specific niche with a company that I was passionate enough where I did not mind mildly obsessing over applying myself to become the greatest contributor that I can to the team. And that was specifically working in the cybersecurity arena with a startup that I believed in. So make sure those things align. Hope you enjoyed this video. We'll see you on the next one.